This is episode 196 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Sean Graham. Sean is the founder of Maven Cost Seg. He's also a real estate investor and a registered CPA and the founder of Maven Equities. Sean, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Jonathan, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just excited to get a redhead on the show because you can't see it. Yours is more red than me because I'm older, but us redheads need to stick together. So I'm excited to talk tax with you, but also got to hit that right away.
I'm trying to keep the color, you know. I got a little bit of white coming in on the beard, but
yeah,
we'll
yeah. Consider that you're looking into a mirror of the future of what your beard will look like this color. So.
That's so funny.
Yeah, well, let's talk about your journey. Growing up, when was the first time that you remember thinking about real estate?
Oh, man. So I would say, like seriously thinking about it was probably in grad school. I obviously, when you're in college or you're in grad school, you're seeing the rent that you're paying, like that's obvious. But I started looking at purchasing houses and how I could do it in an affordable way, right? Like very low down payment, high leverage way.
Yeah.
Right after college, like right after I graduated or right after grad school, and I was going into my first job, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And I applied to. It was a program in Detroit actually, and I applied to it, and they said, hey, basically it's a very low down payment. You got this like great terms on this house. But the deal was you had to stay there, and you had to be your primary residence for like a super long time.
For like 5 years. Yeah, that's what NACA has. It's like 5 or 10 years or something.
Yeah. And I just I wanted to buy it because my brother was at college there, and I could rent it to him and rent it to his friends and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to live here like that long. Right. And so I felt like I could probably get away with it, but ultimately I decided not to do it. And then a couple of years later, I figured out, the whole FHA route and house hacking route. And that was kind of my entrance into real estate. And that worked out very well because I ended up moving to Chicago anyways. And it all turned out for the better. But I would say like the mid-20s was when I started really seriously thinking about real estate.
What was so appealing about self-storage to you compared to house hacking, which of course you're being a landlord?
Well, a couple things. One would be leverage and one would be operations. So on the leverage side, I started with SBA loans, and similar to FHA, you can, purchase real estate with very little money down. So, SBA, you can go 10, 15% down, which is pretty high leverage and allows you to kind of get in the game and get started. So that was one reason. And I would bring in partners to bring the, other JV partners. They would bring the capital, and I would find the deal, run the deal, and then we, and operate it, and we buy it together as a group investment. And so I just do that with like a few other people, right? It's like me and two others, so 3 of us. Other thing was operations. Like it's so simple in terms of what the actual business is. The residential real estate that I would own would be way more stressful than that. I think one of the least expensive investment I ever bought was like the biggest headache I've ever had. And that was just a duplex in Indianapolis, and it was in a terrible area and a terrible renters, squatters, the whole 9 yards. And I bought that thing for like 5 figures. And self-storage, it's not like doesn't get that much more complex when you buy a massive facility versus smaller facility. Like you still need the same operations in place, and there's rarely an emergency, like if ever. It's a pretty straightforward business. You're renting sheds out that store people's stuff, and you have to keep them safe and secure, and they pay you rent on a monthly basis. And if they don't pay, then they get locked out automatically. And when they make their rent payments, then, it opens back up. And so, I really like the simplicity of it. And I guess needless to say too, commercial real estate, you have some control over the value. Like the more profitable you make the facility, the more, you can increase your value. Now, you don't have control over the cap rates. You don't have any control over what interest rates are doing or where the cap rates sit. So that's the one variable you don't. But it's like with my residential properties, I could increase the profitability by 20%. It didn't mean the value of this, of the property was going up by 20% or anything like that. It was still just the neighbor could sell his, and the profit could be a lot less, and mine is going to be worth the same as his.
Let's pivot to cost seg, because I think
Sure.
it's definitely a buzzword that people have heard, but I don't think most people really understand it. Of course, you know this because people come to you and they're like, wow, I'm going to save a bunch of
Yeah.
money. But give us a little breakdown on cost segregation and what assets it's best for and how it's used to help investors kind of save money over the long term.
Sure thing. So in the eyes of the IRS, real estate is a passive activity. And so depreciation is required. So what depreciation means is they say, hey, let's take whatever investment property you buy. So we're not talking about primary residence, just investment properties, whether it's residential or it's commercial. They take the value of the building and you depreciate it for residential over 27 and a half years, over commercial, it's over 39 years. And so we're talking nearly 30 or 40 years. And so you just do same amount every single year, expense it out. That's great. And that helps you lower your taxable income. However, there are ways to accelerate that depreciation so you're not waiting nearly 30 or 40 years, right? And so that's what we do is we do a study to break down the components of a building, of an investment property, and reallocate the depreciation lives into shorter lifespan components. So not everything, we say, hey, IRS, not everything in this building is going to take 39 years to depreciate. In fact, some of it will take 5 years, some of it will take 15 years. And in fact, with bonus depreciation, a lot of this we can expense out in year one. So that's what we do. We're not taking any more depreciation than you would doing without a cost seg study straight line. We're just shifting the value from waiting 30 or 40 years to getting the majority of it in the first year, the first 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I say to people who are learning about cost seg, I'd say, Jonathan, if I could give you $1 today, or if I could give you $1 in 30 years, what would you rather have? And you'd say, well, I'd prefer to have the $1 today, because $1 in 30 years doesn't mean anything to me, right? And it's the same thing here with depreciation. We are just front loading those expenses. And it's important to note, this isn't depreciation isn't a permanent expense, right? It's a deferment of taxes. But there's ways to continue to kick the can down the road where ultimately you don't have to ever pay that back if that's the way that you go down. So there's a lot of unique strategies out there for real estate investors to lower their taxable income or potentially not pay any taxes. I think the other one to think about too is the real estate professional status. So if you're in real estate full time, or you spend more time in real estate than anything else, meaning you can't have a full-time W-2 job. You can have a part-time W-2 job, but you need to be in real estate more than that. And so you have to meet the requirements for being a real estate professional. But then the IRS looks at what you are doing as active and no longer passive, right? So you could have one spouse who qualifies for real estate professional status,
Right.
and that allows the depreciation losses, or just the losses in general. It's not even just depreciation, but allows the losses to offset the other spouse's active income or W-2 income. So the IRS looks at income as, the three main buckets, I'll say, could be the passive income like real estate, active income like earned wages, W-2, that sort of thing. Then the portfolio income like stocks, bonds, that sort of thing. And so the the portfolio income, depreciation doesn't help with that, but it can help to a certain amount. But that passive losses, that's where the key is to try to take advantage of that, to get that to offset the active income. Because it phases out pretty quickly otherwise. If you're not a real estate professional, it's not a short-term rental. I think it phases out starts around $100,000 and ends at $150,000. So if you're making more than that, then those extra losses don't really offset that. But people use depreciation in sale years too, meaning like, hey, I have this big capital gains because I have a rental property over here. I have a lot of capital gains. I don't want to pay taxes on these capital gains. So then on another rental property, they'll get depreciation. Look at a cost segregation study done, get all that extra depreciation to create these depreciation losses, which will help offset the capital gains, because the capital gains on a long-term buy and hold or a rental property, passive rental property or investment property is considered a passive gain. The capital gains are passive too. So the depreciation from another property, that's also passive, those losses, and it can offset the capital gain.